welcome to this another presentation of Pop and Scott Talk Baseball. Another week closer to the playoffs. Just exciting in the sports field right now. We got the footballs have started, college or MLB playoffs right around the corner. And once the weather decides to play along, it'll feel like fall. So regular season, we do have some shakeups in the. I was talking about it last week. Let's just go right to wild card. So nothing has really changed in the top three teams. Other than Houston, nothing has changed. Other than Houston now has jumped Seattle and Texas, and now it has the lead. Texas has fallen out of the playoff spot. They're a game and a half back going into today. Let's see how many. Let's see, 82. They got about 20-some games left. So
I've got all the schedules. I got the schedules from now until the end of the year for all.
Oh, do you?
For the teams that I think.
Right. Well, you said it. Texas has some tough games, and they played Houston, right? So.
Well, Texas, they have the A's today at home, and then they go to Toronto for 4 games. Then they go to Cleveland for 3. They're at home to Boston for 3, to the Mariners for 3. Then they're at California for 3 and at the Mariners for 3. So, I mean, it's not a terrible schedule. It's got some tough games in there.
But they got to play, you said the Mariners 6 times there in the last.
They play the Mariners 6 times in the last week of the season, and
so they can flip.
They have to go to Toronto for 4. And the way their bullpen, I mean, it looks like they might be the odd man out.
Who, Toronto?
It might still be a race in the American League is the American League East, because I expected Tampa Bay to fold up when they lost with the injuries and with the losing the player to the domestic violence.
They're 4 games back.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. They play 3 games at the end. I think they play 3 games at the end of the year against Baltimore.
Right. So.
Yeah, they play the Baltimore plays the Rays at home 4 games. They play the Cardinals and then for 3, and then the Rays for 4, and then the Astros for 3.
As much as everybody's talking about Atlanta and how good Atlanta is, right? They are 2 games. Only 2 games up on Baltimore for best record in baseball.
And Atlanta's not playing that well.
No, they're not.
They're playing around 500 ball. Their pitching looks weak. They score 3,000 runs a game. That's what's saving them.
Right. Go back to the wild card because, Minnesota's they're playing the Mets. They're getting ready to probably sweep them today. And we'll watch that game. I just want to see the young kids from the Mets. Brett Beatty looks like he could be a 4A player instead of a major leaguer, which is sad to see. Hope he can fix it for the Mets. But we have Arizona in the National League as the 3rd spot, right? Or actually leading. No, as the 3rd spot. I'm sorry. In the wild card race. The Cubs are 1 up on them, and Miami's 1.5. San Francisco's falling at 2.5. It's Cincinnati. Cincinnati's playing, falling back to earth a little bit. They're 2.5 as well.
Well, Miami, their schedule, they play at Philadelphia today. Then they have at Milwaukee for 4. They're home to Atlanta for 3. Right there, murderer's row.
Right.
Then they play the Mets away for 3. The Mets at home for 3. Milwaukee for 3. Away for the Mets 3. And away for Pittsburgh 2. So until they get to the Mets in Pittsburgh, they've got some Miami. They got to me, when I looked at all these schedules, American and National League, they had of all the playoff teams or teams that wanted to be in the playoffs, Miami to me had the toughest schedule.
Right. Right. Yeah, and their pitching is, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Alcantara went on the IL again. Did I see that this week or last week for Miami?
May have.
Let's see here.
That because the schedule, and at this time of the year means a lot.
Yeah, so Alcantara is on a 15-day. He's won the Cy Young last year, so no big deal. 15-day IL. I have him in my fantasy league, and I thought I remember seeing that. So he's, I mean, that's basically out for the season at this point. So, yep, not good, not good. So there we are with the wild card. I mean, Dad pointing out again, nailed a lot of things from last week with tough schedules. Pointing it out again. Really, nothing crazy going on in the baseball world other than number one rule as a little leaguer. When you're throwing catch with somebody, you always make sure the guy you're throwing catch with is looking at you when you throw the ball. Somebody didn't tell Aladella Cruz that, and he smoked his co-player in the face before the game. Did you see that? For the Reds.
I heard about it.
Right. I don't know. I think it was Steer, the other great rookie they got. Held a game up for like 20 minutes, and that's rule number one you learn as a 6-year-old.
Well, the Reds have a good shot. You talk about schedule. The Reds,
right?
They play St. Louis today, and then they're at Detroit for 3, at the Mets for 3. Then they play Miami and Pittsburgh at home 3. Minnesota, I'm sorry, 3. Pittsburgh at home for 3. Cleveland for 2, and at St. Louis for 2. So if they don't win several of those games, it's their own fault.
Right. So they only play in one team that has one playoff team, and only I think 2 teams there with a winning record.
They play St. Louis, which doesn't have Detroit doesn't have a winning record. The Mets don't have a winning record. Pittsburgh doesn't have a winning record. They play 3 with Minnesota,
which that's playoff team,
and they play 2 with Cleveland,
which I think they still have a winning record, but it's real close to 500.
But those are the other teams. I mean, they're there for Cincinnati. If they play their cards right, they can do this. But the problem, and you know this as well as I do, and I don't care, name the sport. At the end of the year, the teams you think you're going to beat, you're trying so hard to win, and they're playing loosey-goosey because the only thing they're playing for is to try to keep their job for next year.
Right, and I just, some of those teams, Detroit, they're just road trip. They're just on the farewell tour now for Miguel Cabrera. They don't really show much. The Guardians still play hard out of all of those. Pittsburgh has quit. So I don't see they're lucky.
They beat Atlanta yesterday.
Right. Well, yeah, they're going to win some here and there, but I just don't feel like I shouldn't say quit. They're playing out the season. That's probably not a fair term to say. But have you noticed anything this week that you wanted to touch on or talk about other than records, and been watching the O's or?
One thing about the O's last night, they were winning 12-6 against Boston, and they went into the bottom of the ninth, 13-9, and they won 13-12. And they had 2, and Boston had 2 runners on base. But that was the fastest to 90 wins since 1979.
Right.
So they got 90 wins. Now, this is what I want. I hate to harp on this, fundamentals. It drives me nuts.
Right.
When I was coming up, we still had the old type gloves that I mean, you couldn't just stand there with these big 35-inch gloves. They barely fit your hand. You had to catch everything with two hands.
Right.
So unless you had a first baseman's mitt or catcher's mitt, and you still use two hands. But these guys in the outfield trying to catch a ball with one hand and it pops out of their glove, it drives me nuts. That's one thing. But I saw it happened 3 times yesterday, in 3 games yesterday. This new deal, when a catcher is no longer in the crouch, he's on one knee because he can frame the pitch better.
Right.
In 3 games, just in one day, 3 games yesterday, a ball bounced in the dirt. And if they'd have been in the crouch, they would have been able to shift over to their right and block the ball, but they couldn't shift because they were on one knee. It hit their leg or whatever and went off to the backstop, and either the tying or winning run score.
Right. And the thing is, too, with that knee down, it creates angles for when the ball hits you. It doesn't go straight to it. It goes off to a weird angle.
Right. It doesn't go straight in front of you.
Right.
It goes off on an angle. And so, I mean, one of them was beautiful. The guy, he gets down, ball hits him, comes in, he tries to shift his weight. He can't. He's on his knees, so it hits him and goes off to the backstop. The tying run score. Oh, now he's in a crouch. Too late, dude. I mean, you should have. If you got runners in scoring position, somebody on the bench ought to be hollering at the catcher. You got to get in the crouch. You got to get back in your crouch and stay out of that one knee crap, because all it's doing is costing you ball games.
Right. And if that's the difference that fools umpires in this getting a pitch, strike, or ball, maybe we need to have a talk about umpiring.
Well, not only that, but that goes back to the analytics.
Right.
The analytics say if you're on one knee, you can frame it better. You know what analytics do? Get your ass fired. That's what analytics do. You have analytics. Oh, we're going to go with the analytics. Oh, we lost 3 games. You're fired. Come on.
Right.
You can't measure. You can only measure so much in numbers. A lot of it comes from here, and a lot of it comes from here. Those 2 places you can't gauge with numbers. Oh, you can give somebody a cognitive test, but what are you going to ask him a question? Oh, when do I throw to second base? I mean,
well, that's I sit there and we talk Hall of Famers or future Hall of Famers or Hall of Fame, and the first thing that comes up now is this WAR concept. Wins over replacement,
whatever that means.
And nobody can tell you how that number comes about. It's just a number. And it's compiled over all these different things, and I'm just like, come on, really? That's all. His WAR is not good enough to get him in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, but everything else, I've heard. That just drives me crazy, and that's the part of the analytics. I mean, they'll go back and get WAR previous Hall of Famers, and I'm just like, how?
The other thing, it was a nice little thing the other night. The kid that came up for Washington played center field and threw the guy out to play Young. His last name is Young.
Yes,
he is Young.
Right.
The other night, he came up in the 9th inning. They got 2 strikes on him. They had the infield drawn in, the winning run on third base, and he dribbled the base hit up the middle and scored the winning run. So he got his first walk-off.
Nice.
And he was, when they were interviewing him after the game, he was just thankful for his family and everybody that supported him, and of course for the Nationals giving him the opportunity to come up and play. One other thing about the Nationals, and this kind of bothers me. The oft-injured pitcher, Strasburg.
Right. He retired.
No.
I thought he did.
No. He said he was going to retire. Washington, it was my understanding, had agreed to pay the rest of his contract when he retired. They still owe him like $200 million.
Right.
They were going to pay the rest of his contract. This weekend, they were going to have a ceremony at the ballpark where he was going to retire. They reneged. They reneged on the deal Friday or Thursday. They reneged. So I don't know what's going to happen. So he's not retired yet. So they might make him, since they have to pay him, they might not let him retire as long as they pay him his contract.
Well, I mean, he could retire. I mean, that's the same thing as other players have done, but they might have found something in there that they might have to can go to arbitration, maybe not
Well,
pay
I
the
mean, they
full
might be saying, okay, if you want to retire, we're not going to pay you the rest of the contract because you're retired.
part of it or something. But they might have found
I mean,
something.
I'm saying, okay, that's fine, but don't promise something and then renege. You should have had this if that was one of the concepts, you should have figured that out before.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, that the Nationals are not a very well run organization to start with. And Strasburg is a head case since San Diego days. Uh, he was hurt all the time at
He
San
was hurt
Diego.
in college.
Yeah, I mean,
He's the guy I said in high school he sprained an eyelid waking up. I
right,
mean, he was always hurt.
right. Yeah.
And then Rizzo, the genius in Washington, the genius general manager, gives him this big contract, and I fell on the floor laughing.
Well, like I've talked about it before, the wrong person. Soto should have got the MVP of that World Series. Then that contract wouldn't have happened. You would have probably still had Rondon there. Now, would he have the same injury problems that he has in the Angels organization? But, at least he's an everyday player. I don't know. But anyway, that a lot of things happened there that year that you could see it just that was a emotional contract, not a brain.
Well, it was one of those contracts where you're paying him for what he did, not for what he was going to do.
Right. And I mean, that's what it was. And I mean, that's kind of the same thing that the Mets did with Scherzer and Verlander. You overpay for a guy for what he did, overlooking that they're coming off of arm problems. So I mean, it was neat. They showed. We'll talk. You talked about your homer teams. I could talk about my homer team for a minute. So the Mets, Scherzer gets taken to Texas, and he faces the Astros. He gets taken out early, gets knocked around a little bit, more than a little bit, huh?
A little bit.
Yeah. I try to be nice, but that same night, so that in the trade they get the younger Acuna, and he goes like 4 for 4 with his first home run and another home run and 2 stolen bases. And all they showed them like side by side the same night, and so the Mets feel pretty good. That's one player they got out of that trade, and feeling pretty good about that trade. So far so good, I guess. But around the league right now, it just seems like this time of year you're trying to find stuff to watch. We got Miguel Cabrera finishing out his career, which one of those things. If he comes to a town near you, that's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Go watch him if you can. I've never seen him. I wish I could. If he was going to Baltimore, I mean, but I don't think they're playing in Baltimore. It's just one of those things. Me and you went to go see Chipper on his farewell tour. That was awesome. When we went to the Washington for that, I told people and other people about Yadi Molina and seeing him last year. These are some great players that are Hall of. I don't know. Yadi might not be first ballot, but Miguel Cabrera is a slam dunk first ballot.
I have a hard time thinking that Yadi Molina. I think there's a pretty good argument about who's the greatest catcher of all time because there was a great many of them. I think most people would probably pick Bench.
Or Yogi.
Bench. You got Bench, Yogi. You got Bench and Yogi.
Capanelia.
But Yadi Molina is probably the best defensive catcher that ever played the game.
Yeah.
The closest one I've seen, a defensive catcher close to him, there's two. The guy that catches for the Houston Astros that doesn't hit a lick,
right?
But he does everything else.
Maldonado.
Maldonado. And when I was a kid growing up, Dale Crandall, who caught for the Milwaukee Braves. he from Milwaukee. He wasn't a big hitter, but oh my goodness, that guy could catch and move around behind the plate and everything. I mean, he was just a great catcher.
Right.
But Maldonado, but I tell you, as far as defense and throwing and that, it's hard to beat this guy. I mean, it's hard to beat him. I think he's got a shot at being a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I know he's got, but it's just, man, that is a tough thing to pull off with these writers. Because they make you feel like it's a rite of induction, like you shouldn't automatically get it. I mean, it's hard to imagine there's only been one unanimous vote getter in the history of the Hall, and it's not who you think it would be. It's not Babe Ruth. It's not Mickey Mantle. It's Mariano Rivera.
Yeah, it's a relief pitcher.
Right. So it's just that tells you the writers have the voice. They get there. It's 100% writers. So, it's kind of like there's going to be one guy that Yachty are pissed off in Toledo that has a vote. It won't be unanimous,
Yeah, well, that's all it takes is anger somebody.
Yeah, so when he was a minor leaguer, he didn't didn't say yes sir to somebody.
Well, I mean, Kurt Schilling, who was an outstanding pitcher,
right? He's getting
now. Is he a Hall of Famer? Maybe not, but I'm going to say this: he can't get any votes because of his political views.
Yeah, I think he is a Hall of Famer.
Well, I don't agree with his political views.
Right.
I don't agree with him at all, but that should not. It's what he did on the field.
Right.
It's what he did on the field. You can't. A man's political views are his political views. You can't. That's what makes America so-called great.
Right.
So, I mean, you can't hold that against him, but they do.
Right.
And then you're right. I mean, who was it? Roberto Alomar. He rubbed some writers the wrong way.
Right.
And boy, he had trouble making all-star teams when people voted for him because the writers wrote so bad about him.
Right.
He did this or did that.
Right.
In the clubhouse.
Yeah. When one group has 100% control, issues like that come up. And, I feel Yachty should 100% slam dunk be in first ballot, but just because of that unknown, only reason why I know Miguel's well loved. He's a Triple Crown winner. He's done everything with a bat that can possibly be done. One of the greatest hitters of all time, probably one in a generation.
He does quite a bit for charity and things like that.
Yeah, he's a leader in Detroit. He could probably run for governor, Michigan, and win.
At least mayor of Detroit.
Mayor of Detroit by default. Yeah, so that if you could go out and watch him in his last month, I'm going to try to watch some games of him hitting. Hopefully that's one of those things that ESPN breaks in and shows. I'm waiting to see what Detroit does at their last home game for him, how they'll take him out of the game. That's starting to be a spectacle in itself. I love what the Cardinals did last year. I love what the Yankees did with their group. Special people should have special times in this.
Last year, when the last Cardinals home game, when Wainwright and Yachty and Pujols walked off the field together, that was one of those things that gives you chills a little bit.
I teared up a little bit. I'm tearing up a little bit now. My friends call me emotional Scott, but I love things like that, and I love things that are bigger than the sport, and that was bigger than the sport. And Yachty's another one. He does a lot of stuff for in Mexico and stuff. I mean, he's a great ambassador for the sport. I wish they'd get him into MLB coaching or minor league. I don't know if he's doing instructional work for the Cardinals.
I haven't heard.
I would think if he is talking catching,
you better listen.
You listen. That was That Will Smith and those guys will play with real moods. I think Will Smith is one of the most overlooked catchers in Major League Baseball for the Dodgers. Uh, he is awesome. Every
Yeah,
playoff
he is
season,
excellent.
I think he is maybe a top 5 catcher in our league. He's just and there's one other guy that we're going to be talking about his team tonight. We're both wearing a hat, and that's Adley Rushman. I don't know how much more catching he's going to do, actual catching, before they put him at DH or putting him at first or something. But I know he went through the whole first half of the season through the All-Star break without having a pass ball. You want to talk about putting a knee down or whatever. He didn't have a pass ball. He was the only catcher at one time that didn't have a pass ball. And he works in his pitching staff's having a great year, and you got to give that a little bit to the catcher.
Yeah, the pitching staff's handling
right
when they're on the field. He's the one that handles the staff, and most of the catchers will call the pitch.
right.
And some of the guys like Maddox, he had his own personal catcher,
right,
and he hardly ever he hardly ever shook him off because he trusted what he was calling.
Right. Yeah. So, there I love the catcher position. I don't hide it. I got great catchers behind me here. I start talking about catchers, I can go on and on. But I digress. We brought up Adley Rushman. We both wearing the Orioles hats. I've been wearing it more and more because I can't wait for the playoffs, and I might actually have a team to root for in the playoffs. And that's the team we've chose to talk about today, which does have a rich history. And the Baltimore area is rich in baseball history. Not all Orioles, but just rich in baseball history. So I'll let my dad take it away.
All right. The Baltimore Orioles, and if you look at my hat, they're also known as the O's and also known as the Birds. And
that's what my grandma called them, the Birds.
Yeah, Grandma called them the Birds.
Granny.
Yeah. And of course, they're based in Baltimore. They're in the American League East, which is tough. As one of the American League's 8 charter members in 1901, the franchise spent its first year as a major league club in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, known as the Milwaukee Brewers. It then moved to St. Louis, Missouri, to become the St. Louis Browns in 1902. After 52 years in St. Louis, the franchise was purchased in November of 1953 by a syndicate of Baltimore business and civic interests led by attorney and civic activist Clarence Miles and Mayor Thomas D. Alessandro Jr. The team's current owner is American trial lawyer Peter Angelos. The Orioles' home ballpark is Oriole Park at Camden Yards, which opened in 1992 in downtown Baltimore. And if you've never been to that ballpark, now I have to admit the Washington ballpark's nice. That's a nice ballpark. It's got great seats. You can see a lot, but that ballpark in Baltimore is probably the prettiest one I've ever. That's the prettiest major league park I've been in. Now, I have not been in Pittsburgh, I haven't been in Denver, and I haven't been in Kansas City, which are 3 places people tell me are really nice. But the Camden Yards, it is gorgeous there. The Orioles adopted their team name.
Very good food at that ballpark too.
Oh yeah, Boog Powell's got his.
Yeah, and everything else they have there.
The Orioles adopted their team name in honor of the official state bird of Maryland. It had been used previously. Now here's where we talk about the history a little bit of the city, by several baseball clubs in the city, including, now get this, another AL charter member franchise, also known as the Baltimore Orioles, which in 1903 moved to New York City and eventually became the New York Yankees. So the New York Yankees started in Baltimore. Nicknames of the team includes the O's and the Birds. I stated that. The franchise's first World Series appearance came in 1944 when the St. Louis Browns lost to the St. Louis Cardinals. The Orioles went to 6 World Series appearances from 1966 to 1983, winning 3 in 1966, 70, and then 1983. This era of the club featured several future Hall of Famers who would later be inducted representing the Orioles, such as third baseman Brooks Robinson, outfielder Frank Robinson, starting pitcher Jim Palmer, first baseman Eddie Murray, shortstop Cal Ripken Jr., and manager Earl Weaver. The Orioles have won a total of 9 division championships: 69, 70, 71, 73, 74, 79. They had a pretty good team in the 70s. 83, 97, and 2014. They won 7 pennants.
They had some good pitching, not behind just Palmer, but they had Steve Stone and a few other guys.
Yeah. They had Cuellar.
Yeah, that
Steve
defense
Stone.
too.
Yeah.
Al
remember they had
Bumry,
Messina too.
Flanagan. Yeah. Well, Messina was later. Later, but it was 80s, late 70s and 80s. Dempster behind the plate. Go ahead, Dad. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. No, there were 7 pennants. 1944, while they were in St. Louis, and in 66, 69, 70, 71, 79, and 83. 3 wild card berths in 96, 2012, and 2016. The franchise was the last charter member of the American League to win a pennant and the last charter member to win a World Series. After 14 consecutive losing seasons between 1998 and 2011, the team qualified for the postseason 3 times under manager Buck Showalter, who is now with the Mets, and general manager Dan Duquette, including a division title and advancement to the American League Championship Series for the first time in 17 years in 2014. 4 years later, the Orioles lost 115 games, the most in franchise history. The Orioles chose not to renew the expired contracts of Showalter and Duquette after that season, ending their respective tenures with Baltimore. The Orioles
didn't they lose something like 20 games to start that season or something?
Yeah, they were 0-20, something like that. It was ridiculous. The Orioles' current manager is Brandon Hyde, while Mike Elias serves as general manager and executive vice president. I would be hard-pressed to find another manager in the American League who could win Manager of the Year. I mean,
nobody expected this. Not this year. Not this year.
No, they thought this team was going to do this next year or the year after.
Yeah.
Now, this is what I said last week. All you Oriole fans out there, they're my favorite team in the American League. I'm a Nationals fan first, but the Orioles are my favorite team in the American League. Don't be upset if they can't replicate this next year. Everything is going their way. 2 nights ago in Boston, tying winning run on base, and Devers hits a blast to right field. A guy made a spectacular catch, robbed him of a home run. I thought Devers was going to have a heart attack between first and second base. Last night, like I said, they won 13-12 after having a big lead because nobody could get anybody out. So I'm just saying that everything seems to be falling their way. But anywho, from the 1901 through the end of 2021, the franchise's overall win-loss record is 8,845 wins, 9,873 losses for .473. But you got to remember, all those years at St. Louis, they pretty much stunk. I mean, they had good players in some position, but they were pretty bad. Since moving to Baltimore in 1954, the Orioles have an overall win-loss record of 5,466 to 5,398, which is .503 through the end of 2022. So the Orioles, when they first moved to St. Louis, from St. Louis to Baltimore, hey, guess what, folks? They were still the Browns, and they still were terrible. So those first few years in Baltimore, they didn't do much. It was only in the 60s in the early 60s, they started playing really good ball. Now, the Browns, some of the Hall of Famers that played for the St. Louis Browns, and here again, some of them played with other teams. But were Jim Bottomley, Dizzy Dean, who spent most of his career with the Gas House Gang, and his brother Daffy in St. Louis with the Cardinals, Rick Farrell, Goose Goslin, Rogers Hornsby, Heine Manouche, George Sisler, Satchel, Don't Look Behind You, Somebody Might Be Gaining on Your Page, Rube Waddell, Eddie Plank, and Bill Veeck, who was an owner / general manager. Bill Veeck, when he was with the Browns in St. Louis, put a midget on the team and brought the midget up to bat one night so he could get a walk.
Right.
This was the kind of stuff Vic did. All right. Now, some of the I named quite a few of the Orioles outstanding players like Brooks and Eddie Murray and Cal Ripken and that. But some of the others that I didn't mention in that group were Rob Alomar, Luis Aparicio, who also played with the White Sox, Harold Baines, Mike Mussina, and the great knuckleballer Hoyt Wilhelm. That's
a lot of people don't. Reggie Jackson played for Baltimore for like a half a season.
Yeah, he was there for back
to Oakland.
He went to the dugout, got a cup of coffee, and left.
Yeah. I have his autograph on an Orioles helmet before that.
But that's and of course now being in Baltimore, I did get a chance. I've been up to some of the games in Baltimore and the old stadium. That was
well, that's what I was going to say. I go, you can't talk about how great Camden is and how great Memorial is for how bad it was, right? So Memorial had your seat could be blocked due to structures. The I-beam is going to be, if you're under the underhang in the first deck, you could be sitting behind a beam.
A beam.
We had this happen to us.
And you're doing this.
Yes. And a fly ball you're not going to see because of the overhang. We sat down and we're like, oh, we're under the overhang, because I think it was an afternoon game against the Yankees.
And it was.
And I was like, and I was like, and I mean, we've been there for a few games. I just can't remember them all. But I just remember this. And we sat, if the ball got hit into like just right of center field into right field, we had to look around the pole.
And when the ball was hit in the air, you had to look at the outfielders or the infielders to see who was going to run. You didn't even know what direction it was going.
Yeah. So I mean,
but I mean, it did keep the sun off of us. I will give
it that. But those things is what makes memories. That's why I can remember those games. I was young. I believe when we went on a trip with our city Parks and Rec.
Yeah, the recreation department.
Yeah, so I mean
that us up there on a bus.
Right, and it was a lot of fun. That was Yankees with like Mattingly, Boggs, Winfield. They had some greats, but they weren't very good at that time.
Yeah, neither team was fantastic. It was
right,
but I mean, it was great. It was great to be at the ballpark, and I cannot remember. The New York pitcher. But he got a bag of balls and he went over in front. I don't know if you'll remember this. He went over in front of the box seats. Now remember, this is long before the screens went all the way down to baseline.
Yeah.
Behind the plate.
He went over
on the side where the Yankees, were behind their dugout, and there was other kids from Baltimore too. But there was a bunch of kids there. He was taking the ball. He wasn't tossing them the ball. He was taking the balls and throwing them in the air and hitting it and making it foul. Making it flip back off the back. He did about 10 balls like that. The kids were going nuts in the stands. And I was impressed because I thought I could handle a bat. But I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I just remember that because the kids went crazy. And it was a great. I mean, when you go to a Major League Baseball game, it's a completely different atmosphere than from some other sports. It's that way to me.
That's why I like, even today, if I go to a game, I like to get there early. I like to see, at least the home team be on the field. You'll see the away team out there messing with them a little bit. You really can't get autographs anymore at a major league game like you used to when I was growing up. It was as long as you were able to fight your way to the front of the mob, you could get
Yeah. Well,
autographs.
sometimes batting practice is fun to watch, depending on who's there.
Right. And that's
Because
what
when
I'm saying.
Miami was
Yes.
there, we watched Giancarlo Stanton take batting practice, and I mean, he was.
Yeah, and I mean that's you get to see that, and just I love the atmosphere. It's nothing better than going to me to go to a ballpark and watch a baseball game. It's just uh, great time. Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the greats. I mean, Eddie Murray, maybe one of the most what prolific home run hitters, switch hitting, uh,
See, one thing about Eddie
first
Murray,
baseman.
The one thing about Eddie Murray was he was quiet. Eddie Murray, a lot of players today, and I'll just give you a quick example. Before we got on here, I was in the other room and I was watching the Commanders and Cardinals game. And the Cardinals got an interception. The whole team runs down to the end zone and starts playing Dancing with the Stars,
Right.
like a bunch of morons. And so they run down there and oh, look at me. Hey, look at me. This is my brand. This is my brand. Look at my shoes. Look at my headband. I'm an idiot, but that's what I am. So Eddie Murray didn't do these things. Those players back then didn't do these things. They played the game, and that was it. Now, there were some people that did, like Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson was a hey, look at me guy. But, I mean, there were very few and far between.
Well,
But
I mean, Eddie Murray, there's stories of him in the clubhouse, though.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in public, out on the field.
Right.
Out on the field. He was just one of the, because you can always see players chipping at each or chapping. And he was one of those first basemen that didn't talk.
Right, he didn't.
I mean, if you watch a Dodgers game, anybody gets on first base with Freddie out there, it's a.
Well, the games, Keith Hernandez talks a lot about this. He wouldn't ask you how your family was doing, all that stuff either. He when he was out there, his business was playing the game and winning. Now it's a business between everybody, and you don't know who's going to be your teammate the next year.
Yeah, or your business partner.
Yeah, you
who's
kind
going to do
of
the shoe deal with you.
Yeah, and I mean, I can understand that. I mean, it's baseball. You're not actually playing. We're not firing at each other from trenches. It's it's a different game, different mentality. But yeah, that those teams were. I love when I think of the '80s. I do think of the Orioles. That was our first team on cable that we got to see on WDCA Baltimore. So my first memories of watching a team, and they didn't show all the games like they do now. They showed quite a bit, but they didn't show all of them.
But you only had one team. I mean,
right.
They were the only. It was them, and then WGN came on, and you got to see the.
Well, you had the Saturday afternoon game of the week, and you were waiting to see who they were going to show, and most of the time it was either going to be Yankees or Dodgers game because they were both dominant at that time. Or not Yankees weren't really all that dominant, but they're still the Yankees. But I got to see a lot of That's how I got to be an Expos fan, was the Saturday afternoon game, because the Expos were really good in the early '80s. So got to see quite a bit. But Baltimore was our first team, local team that we had. So it does have a special place in both of our hearts because of that. And before we had WGN, before we had TBS, before we had all these super channels. I mean, this is back in the day where TV still had a turn. We had to put the TV on 3 to watch cable and flick the little box on top of
you had to walk over to the TV to change the channel. You didn't have a remote.
Right. I was the remote. And then
when I was a kid, we first got our first TV in the spring of '54, we had one channel.
Right. Well, I mean, even then it was the big TV on the floor, the wood grain.
Yeah, they weighed 3 tons.
Cabinet, but your screen was only about 20 inches wide.
Yeah.
The old tube days, they weighed about 800 pounds. But yeah, great memories. Just when you said you want to do this one this week, instantly just all those memories flood back. Why I love this game so much. I love talking about all the other teams, but the Orioles always hold a special place. Cal Ripken, Jim Palmer, um, Dempsey, just Al Bumry. I could Steve Stone. I could just see all these guys just like it was Ron Renicky. I just like it was the other day, watching these guys play. Uh, Puts a big smile on my face. Anything you want to conclude with this week, Dad?
No, I've got I've got the list of the schedule, and what I'll do is I'll just as they play the games, I'll mark them off, and then
Right.
when we do our show next week, it'll be in my opinion, it'll be a lot clearer next Sunday than
Yeah.
it is now. Although, well, here's the thing. This is crazy too. Tomorrow night, they're making a big deal about it on MLB because they're going to show the Red Sox and the Yankees. Now, granted, that's the big deal in baseball. The Yankees and the Red Sox, all the channels will fight over getting the Yankees and Red Sox. But this year, it doesn't mean anything.
Means absolutely nothing.
It means not. You know what the
You,
Sunday
you
night
sit there,
game is
so
tonight?
you could probably look on your list you got right now and have a game that actually means something that they should be showing, but they're going to share the Yankees and Red Sox that are playing for last place in the American
Because
League.
that's what people look at.
Right.
They show what people look at. Well, I mean, if you want, um, let's see. Miami is at Milwaukee.
Right. That's huge.
That's big. That's big.
I would rather watch any of the teams that are in the playoff.
Well, it could be. I'm sorry because I don't have the dates. I just have the order.
Okay.
And there's some off day. Monday is one of their off days, so that might be the only. Well, I doubt it because tonight's game is. I looked to see what tonight's game was, and because now I watch more baseball than football because it's more important, in my opinion.
Right.
But tonight's game is San Francisco and Colorado. Now San Francisco's playing for a playoff, so I guess I can see that. But I tried to see what other games were, and they're all played this afternoon or 4:30 or whatever. So that's why it's the only game tonight. But that still has some meaning. That game means a lot more because San Francisco's trying to get in the playoffs. I mean, somebody on MLB yesterday made the brilliant comment that the Yankees had a shot, and I said, "What for next year?" I mean.
Well, they
were playing a lot better, and then they lost 2 games. They lost yesterday to Milwaukee, and they lost the day before. I mean,
the other teams would have to not win a game, and they have to go undefeated.
But I don't really have anything else until next week. Well, it'll be a lot clearer.
Today, the game they should be showing tonight is either Miami Philly, which is in the top of the 7th, or Seattle Tampa Bay.
Oh my goodness!
That's in the bottom of the 6th right now. I don't know what the score is.
I watched that yesterday, and Rodriguez hit a home run that the left fielder caught because he hit it up through the roof.
Oh, did he?
He hit it up through the girders at the roof.
Yeah,
I think that kid might get to. They're going to give the most valuable player to Ohtani, and he's not going to play the last 2 months of the season.
Oh, he's not playing right now at all?
Not that I know of.
I thought he was hitting.
I haven't seen anything in the news about what he's done. Usually when he hits home runs and that, you see it on the highlights. I haven't seen anything.
Right. I thought he was going to DH. But yeah, I could be very wrong, too.
I think my rookie of the year now, I think is going to be Gunnar. Gunnar hit another 3-run homer last night. Gunnar Henderson.
Let's see.
I'm just saying I haven't seen anything. Usually they show the highlights where he's hit home runs. I'll pull up the internet. Oh, look what he's done! First time in 750 years of baseball.
Because everything right now is about his free agency.
Well, somebody's going to overspend on that,
Yeah, it says right now Ohtani 29 has remained the club's regular designated hitter even after being diagnosed with a torn ulnar collateral ligament.
Maybe it's because
he is a free agent at the end of the season.
They took him out of a game the other night, and that's why I thought he might be out.
Right, and I mean, who knows? They might just took him out for cautionary reasons, whatever. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And as the season winds down, and we really won't talk about who's doing what as teams. We'll talk more and more about who we think is going to be some of the award winners of the season coming up. So be looking for that here in the next few weeks on the channel. Until next time, like, share, tell a friend. If you haven't subscribe. Like I said, I'm mainly I'm getting subscribers here and there, and they look at this, and we're not talking cards. We just talk baseball on this day, Monday, with my pops. So until next time, see ya.